We're constantly bombarded with trailers, posters, and concept art for franchise films, but on the flip side, there are quite a few that have successfully stayed under the radar. From indie comedies to biblical epics, let's take a look at some of the sequels you didn't know were being made. We thought this day would never come, but it looks like Ridley Scott is heading back to ancient Rome. Nearly 20 years after the original Gladiator hit theaters, Scott is finally making a sequel to the story of Maximus Decimus Meridius. Of course, old Maximus is busy walking through wheat fields in heaven, so what's the sequel going to be about?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Well, according to producer Walter F. Parks, the film is going to start about 25 to 30 years after the original ended. Part 2 will focus on Lucius, the son of Maximus's old flame, Lucilla. While Spencer Treat Clark played Lucius in the first film, we don't know if he's going to reprise his role for Gladiator 2. However, we do know that Peter Craig will be working on the screenplay, and he's a guy with some impressive credits to his name, including The Town, both Mockingjay movies, and the upcoming Top Gun sequel. And with Scott at the helm, we're pretty sure we'll be entertained. As the crew of the Nostromo learned the hard way all the way back in 1979, it's hard to kill an alien. In reflecting on his landmark sci-fi horror film on its 40th anniversary, director Ridley Scott told Variety that a third prequel, the follow-up to 2012's Prometheus and 2017's Alien Covenant, is indeed on the way. Despite generally positive critical reviews, Covenant underperformed at the box office, throwing the future of the franchise into uncertainty. But following Disney's acquisition of Fox, both Scott and Alien's new studio home seem eager to return to the sinister stars yet again. As for what this third prequel might be about, one thing is for sure. It won't follow the format of the original Alien. Speaking to The Hollywood Reporter, Scott talked about the need for the franchise to continue to evolve in order to succeed. This next Alien film, tentatively titled Alien Awakening, is still in the very early stages, and none of the cast of Covenant has yet been asked to return. Still, Scott maintains that it's happening, he'll be directing, and that the film is currently in the script phase. It's been almost 20 years since audiences followed effervescent sorority girl Elle Woods to Harvard Law School in Legally Blonde.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
She continued to ascend the professional ladder in 2003's Legally Blonde 2, Red, White, and Blonde, which saw Elle head to Washington, D.C. Now Elle is back for a third adventure. In addition to starring as Elle, Reese Witherspoon will also act as a producer this time through her Hello Sunshine banner. Originally, Legally Blonde scribes Kirsten Kiwi Smith and Karen McCullough were attached to pen the script. But since then, The Office alum Mindy Kaling and Brooklyn Nine-Nine director Dan Gore have stepped in to completely rewrite the screenplay. No director has yet been announced for the film, nor have any plot details been revealed. Sources originally told Deadline that the threequel will be much in the spirit of the first film, which saw Elle draw on her fashion sense, optimism, and strong sense of sisterhood to defy the patriarchy, lift up the women around her, and look great doing it. While that quote referred to the first script by Smith and McCullough, we imagine that Kaling and Gore's screenplay for Legally Blonde 3 will also embrace the original film's themes of female empowerment, taking Elle on a new legal adventure that hopes to appeal to longtime fans and newcomers alike. Jim Henson's cult classic fantasy Labyrinth has a die-hard following thanks to its fantastical and creepy storytelling, Henson's imaginative creature creations, and of course an iconic performance from David Bowie as Jareth the Goblin King. Making a sequel to Henson's final feature film seems like a pretty intimidating task, but the Jim Henson Company feels up to it. News of the Labyrinth sequel first broke in 2017, with Don't Breathe filmmaker Fede Alvarez attached to direct. However, Alvarez announced in April of 2020 that he decided to step away from the film. The project didn't stay rudderless for long, though. In May of 2020, Deadline reported that Doctor Strange director Scott Derrickson has stepped in to helm the highly anticipated sequel. While we don't yet have any details on the story that will bring us back into the world of Labyrinth, insiders have said the sequel would indeed be a continuation of the story that began in the original film, but that the character of the Goblin King would not be making an appearance. Although rumor has it that a third Sherlock Holmes film starring Robert Downey Jr. has always been a part of the Warner Brothers plan, the actor has spent the past decade anchoring the Marvel Cinematic Universe as the genius billionaire playboy philanthropist Tony Stark. Saving the world every couple of years is a draining gig, and Downey's superhero commitments kept him from being able to take up the detective's trademark pipe for a third time. However, now that Downey has finally exited the MCU for good, he finally has time to team up with Jude Law's Watson for one more case. The third Sherlock Holmes film will be helmed by Rocketman director Dexter Fletcher, a departure from the first two films, which were both directed by Guy Ritchie. While Sherlock Holmes 3 was originally scheduled to release on Christmas Day 2020, it has since been pushed back a year and will supposedly now be striding confidently into theaters December 21st, 2021. The Hitman's Bodyguard wasn't exactly a critical success, earning a pretty lousy 39% approval rating over on Rotten Tomatoes. But the movie did pretty well at the box office, pulling in $177 million worldwide. After all, how can an audience say no to the combined charisma of Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson? These two dudes are as charming as it gets, so fans of the first film will be happy to know that The Hitman's Bodyguard is getting a sequel, confusingly titled The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Reynolds and Jackson are both returning, and Salma Hayek is coming back as the titular wife. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the plot will find Reynolds' bodyguard trying to live a peaceful life when he gets mixed up again with Jackson's hitman. The movie will also star familiar names like Morgan Freeman, Antonio Banderas, and Richard E. Grant, and promises plenty more wild action. Your move, creeps. RoboCop is back. According to Deadline, the cyborg star is returning to the big screen, although it seems this new film is going to mess around with the continuity. The original RoboCop was directed by Paul Verhoeven, and it made quite a killing when it was released in 1987. After two sequels starring original actor Peter Weller, the franchise was rebooted in 2014 with actor Joel Kinnaman in the title role. The remake wasn't nearly as popular as the first film, and sadly for Mr. Kinnaman, it looks like the new film is going to ignore the recent remake. The latest entry in the franchise will be called RoboCop Returns, and it began life as a script written right after the original was a hit. Sadly, the script never got made, but now MGM is giving it another go. Sadly, Peter Weller won't be returning to reprise his role, which leaves the door open for yet another actor to go cybernetic. Though Neil Blomkamp was initially attached to direct, he announced in August 2019 that scheduling conflicts had forced him to depart the project, tweeting that he was, quote, excited to watch it in theaters with other fans. In November of 2019, Orion Pictures announced that Little Monsters director Abe Forsyth had taken up the helm of RoboCop Returns and will be giving the screenplay a fresh rewrite. When The Meg swam into the public consciousness, some might have scoffed at this ridiculous-sounding Jaws ripoff, but the Megalodon movie earned some serious coin at the box office, pulling in more than $500 million worldwide. After all, this is a movie where Jason Statham goes to war with a gigantic shark. Who doesn't want to see that? After audiences went into a feeding frenzy for the film, plans were almost immediately set in motion for a sequel. We don't really know what the plot will be, but since The Meg is actually based on a series of books by Steve Alten, the sequel might draw on the next novel, which features an even bigger shark and the giant crocodile-like Kronosaurus. In other words, The Meg 2 might feature Statham fighting a monstrous shark and a dinosaur fish, which is a major win for moviegoers everywhere.
It's Megalodon.
Coming off of the runaway success of 2018's Crazy Rich Asians, it would be surprising if the opulent film didn't earn a sequel. And in fact, it's getting two. Based on Kevin Kwan's books of the same names, China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People Problems are both moving ahead at Warner Brothers, although it may be a while before we get to see them. Due to the busy schedules of the franchise's A-list cast and director John M. Chu, it may be a while before everyone can get together again for the next two installments in the Crazy Rich Asians saga. However, producer Nina Jacobson says that the plan is to shoot both sequels back-to-back, so that fans aren't waiting years between the second and third films. As for when this back-to-back shooting might happen, it could still be a ways off. According to actress Gemma Chan, filming on China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People Problems will begin sometime in 2020 at the earliest. We appear to be in the midst of an Eddie Murphy renaissance. After gradually fading from the spotlight since his heyday in the 80s and 90s, Murphy is suddenly back in a big way. The comedy legend gave a critically acclaimed performance in 2019's Dolomite Is My Name, made a triumphant return to Saturday Night Live as host, lined up new stand-up comedy specials for Netflix, and announced sequels to two of his biggest movies from the 80s. While the Coming to America sequel is the one getting the most attention, Murphy's also planning to return to Beverly Hills Cop. Marking the fourth installment in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, this newest sequel will also be a collaboration between Murphy and Netflix, after Paramount previously pulled the plug on a planned Beverly Hills Cop 4 back in 2016. Murphy will be reprising his role as Axel Foley, the Detroit cop who repeatedly finds himself traveling to Beverly Hills to investigate various crimes. The first Beverly Hills Cop was a smash success at the box office in 1984, rising to become one of the highest-grossing comedies of all time, although the sequels in 1987 and 1994 brought in diminishing returns. There's no word yet on when Beverly Hills Cop 4 will move into production at Netflix, but considering how fast Murphy's star is rising once again, we wouldn't be surprised if the streaming giant decides to strike while the iron is hot. After two Tomb Raider films starring Angelina Jolie in 2001 and 2003, the franchise was rebooted in 2018 with Alicia Vikander in the lead role. Now that new franchise is also getting a sequel, currently set for release March 19, 2021. Vikander is set to reprise her role as Lara Croft, and Ben Wheatley will direct a script penned by his wife and frequent collaborator Amy Jump. Adapted from the popular Tomb Raider video game series, the first film follows adventurous archaeologist Lara Croft as she journeys into perilous locations in search of her missing father. Although little is known about the plot of the sequel, the first film set up one possible storyline with its reveal that her father's former business partner, Anna Miller, heads up the very company that was set to release the world-ending virus that Croft prevented. The door is wide open for Kristen Scott Thomas to return for the sequel, stepping more fully into the role of villain than she did in the first film. While writer and director Kevin Smith was in quarantine in 2020, he did some polishing work on a few old script ideas. One of those is the sequel to 1995's Mallrats, which he penned under the working title Twilight of the Mallrats. The plot of the original film pivots around a dating game show being filmed at a shopping mall and stars Jeremy London, Jason Lee, Claire Forlani, Shannon Doherty, Ben Affleck, and Michael Rooker. This time, instead of a game show, the plot will focus on some sort of convention taking place at the mall. Of the original cast, Smith confirmed that Shannon Doherty will be returning for the sequel, and that she's already read the script and loved it. He also tweeted in May of 2020 that Jason Lee was in the process of reading the script, although Lee hasn't officially signed on yet. Joining Doherty for Twilight of the Mallrats will be Jay and Silent Bob reboot co-star Aparna Brielle, who Smith says will be at the center of the sequel as the daughter of Lee's character, Brody Bruce. Twilight of the Mallrats doesn't have a clear release date yet, but Smith hopes to start shooting soon. After the runaway success of the Hunger Games series, which dominated the box office from 2012 to 2015 and moved more than 65 million books in the US, it seemed likely that audiences would one day get the opportunity to return to the dystopian world of Panem one way or another. Sure enough, in June of 2019, publisher Scholastic announced that it would be releasing another novel by Suzanne Collins set in the Hunger Games world, and The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes hit shelves on May 19, 2020. Set 64 years before the events of the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes follows an 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow who would eventually grow up to become the ruthless ruler of Panem in Collins' original novels. A film version of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was confirmed by Lionsgate prior to the book's release, to be directed by Hunger Games veteran Francis Lawrence. Fans of Charlize Theron in action roles are in for a treat. The Mad Max Fury Road and The Old Guard star will soon be slipping back into the platinum wigs of Lorraine Broughton, her enigmatic character from Atomic Blonde. Theron told The Hollywood Reporter in an interview in July of 2020 that an Atomic Blonde sequel was in active development, and that the lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic was actually helping move the process along, giving Theron and the writers more time to work on the script over Zoom. Also starring John Goodman, James McAvoy, and Sofia Boutella, the first film found Theron's ruthless MI6 agent investigating a murder and dodging double crosses coming from every angle in Cold War-era Berlin. No details have yet been revealed about the plot of Atomic Blonde 2, but if the first film is any indication, we expect another twisting spy caper with plenty of hard-hitting action. Some films get theatrical or streaming sequels, while others get turned into TV series, but if you're the Nicolas Cage starring treasure-hunting film National Treasure, you get both. The long-awaited threequel to 2004's National Treasure and 2007's National Treasure Book of Secrets seems to finally be moving forward at Disney, and they've tapped Bad Boys 4 scribe Chris Brenmer to write the script. But that's not all. National Treasure will also find new life as a Disney Plus TV series, which producer Jerry Bruckheimer says is currently in the development process. While the TV series will feature the same concept but a young cast, National Treasure 3 is expected to reunite the cast from the first two films, presumably including Diane Kruger, Justin Bartha, and of course Cage as protagonist Benjamin Franklin Gates. Also expected to return is director John Turteltaub, who helmed both of the first two films. Although Bruckheimer says the Disney Plus series is currently further along in the development pipeline, he's hopeful that both projects will ultimately come to fruition, delivering a veritable treasure trove of new National Treasure adventures. For anyone who spent their childhood staying up late at night reading the spine-tingling Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark short story collections by Alvin Schwartz and illustrator Stephen Gammell, the news that master horror filmmaker Guillermo del Toro was adapting some of those stories into a feature film was likely creepy music to their ears. The Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark film, directed by Andre Ovredal, arrived in 2019, weaving a number of the chilling short stories from the books into a single narrative. The film was a success, receiving mostly positive reviews and performing respectably at the box office. In April 2020, a sequel was officially announced, which would reunite Ovredal and Del Toro for another round of spooky tales. Set in 1968, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark followed a group of teens who are horrified to realize that the terrifying stories written in a book they found are becoming a reality. Once again, Del Toro will be crafting the story for the second film, although he hasn't revealed yet whether Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark 2 will continue the story that began in the first film, which left the door wide open for a sequel, or if it will follow brand new characters and events unrelated to the first film. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.